Caravaggio was in the 1600s known as the most famous painter of Rome. Whether this was because of some of the most famous masterpieces of artwork ever created, or because of the turbulent lifestyle of the artist, who knows? One thing is for sure, Caravaggio had a reputation that preceded him. Michelangelo Merisi received the name Caravaggio after a small village outside of Milano. When he was born, the bubonic plague raged across Europe, and Caravaggio was like many others in the middle of this hell. His father, grandfather and grandmother all died to the plague within 3 days of each other. This left him with his mother, but she too passed only 4 years later. I think it's safe to say that this would leave scars on most kids, and it sure did for Caravaggio. This rough start in life exploded him into a prolific but disturbed lifestyle that still today makes my jaw drop. What saved his future was probably painting. As a young artist, he revealed incredible talent, and he apprenticed with the painter Simone Pietrasano at the age of just 12. He honed his skills here for 4 years. He moved to Rome in 1592. He struggled with poverty and finding work in the beginning, but he kept at it. And in Rome is where he gained notoriety and ended up becoming one of the greatest painters of his time. The two paintings that really set things in motion for him here was the Martyrdom of St. Matthew and the Calling of St. Matthew. These were completed in the year 1600. He never struggled to find work after that. I think for artists today, stories like this are certainly still relevant. You can struggle for years, but one piece of art or just the right client can quickly change things. And this did it for Caravaggio. Like a lot of artists before him, he worked for wealthy patrons, the church or other powerful people. I am speculating here, but it seems like he on purpose chose to create a darker characteristic in his work that sort of went against the idealistic religious paintings of the past. Maybe so he stood out, and with this took the religion down to a more human level. Caravaggio took inspiration from gambling drunks, prostitutes and other outcasts of the time that you would see walking the streets of Rome, which to me said that he wanted to showcase religion in a more human-like form. As the Catholic Church was in the blazing Counter-Reformation and the fight against the Protestants, the Catholic Church turned to painters, sculptors and architects to showcase the dominance and the power of Catholicism. This truly shows the political position and the power of art and how it was used at this time. Since a lot of people of the time were illiterate, the approach of using visual art made a lot of sense. If you have ever been to Rome, you understand how this could pull people in. Some of the work of these times was and still is truly unbelievable. Caravaggio came onto the scene after the High Renaissance, where religion was painted as this idealistic beauty that reflected stories as something higher and more than just human. He was a pioneer of tenebrism, which uses chiaroscuro, the painting technique that uses high contrast of light and dark. In comparison to earlier periods, this creates a more dramatic realism. Caravaggio's paintings are certainly a testament to the dramatic paintings of this time. He wasn't necessarily an outsider to the rough aspects of life at this time, although he surely had opportunities and wealthy patrons that most people would never come close to. He was known to actively engage in street fights and bar brawls. He was sort of famously known to be walking down the street, probably drunk, with a sword in his hand and shouting at people to start fights. He was brought to court numerous of times. One example of this was scaring a guard with his sword, and another was throwing a plate at the face of a waiter because he believed undercooked artichokes were an insult. He even cut a hole in his ceiling to let in natural light while he was painting. This ended up getting him evicted though. It is obviously not the first time we have heard about an artist of the past who had a screw or two loose. But it seems like he was just on another level. He even murdered a guy in 1606. I'll get to more on that later though. Not just his absolute masterful techniques of using light and darkness to tell stories, but the symbolism of objects that in themselves convey a message or a story really adds to his paintings. I think his somewhat conservative painting style, in the terms of simplicity of the backgrounds and how many objects or characters there are, this makes it so that the objects in this scene have to have a significant meaning. The characters of the paintings are no doubt the most powerful force in the storytelling. The raw emotion the characters hold, like an image was snapped in the middle of the action. With this, Caravaggio captured such a believability of the stories told in the paintings. No wonder the Catholic Church used him in the Counter-Reformation. His paintings have inspired many artists after him. Artists like Rembrandt, Vermeer and Bernini to name a few. Even Martin Scorsese has commented on finding inspiration in his work. Caravaggio has on a lot of levels lived an, well, let's say interesting life, but his reckless lifestyle eventually caught up to him. As I stated earlier, he even murdered a man, and this meant he had to flee the city of Rome because of a death warrant. Historians argue over why he ended up killing this guy, who was believed to be a pimp. Some think it was over one of the prostitutes that Caravaggio used as a model, or over a game of tennis or a debt. But whatever the reason was, this led to Caravaggio fleeing Rome. Through this turbulent time, he kept working on his paintings and he tried desperately to get a pardon from the Pope. Through powerful friends, he was able to deliver paintings to the Pope in the pursuit of a pardon. One of these paintings was the painting David with the head of Goliath. There's a great argument that Caravaggio painted himself as both David and Goliath, so he could showcase to the Pope that he had changed, and quite literally killed off his old self. He never ended up receiving a pardon, as he died at the early age of 38. Reasons for his death are not known for certain and are still being discussed today. Lead poison from his paints, a street brawl, or maybe something else. There's something really inspiring and exciting reading about these old artists and their lives. Being an artist myself, a digital one though, and obviously not close to comparing anything I do to Caravaggio, it is inspiring though to learn about the artists and artists like him that were so prolific and great at their craft. I'll say maybe not that inspired by his personality and, to be frank, his insane lifestyle and choices. But I have to say, there's even something inspiring about him fleeing the city of Rome for a murder, but still keeping up with his craft. Although that probably wasn't just because of the love for the craft, that was more likely just survival. Anyway, you gotta take the good from what you can, from the geniuses of the past. So some of the visual that has been shown in the video are processed from an artwork I have created inspired by these stories and the life of Caravaggio. And this is the final result of that work. The elements of the artwork all are inspired by specific events or stories from Caravaggio's life. The overall story of the image is that the older, drunk and crazy Caravaggio killed off his younger self. Like the painting of David with the head of Goliath, but sort of the opposite. The young version symbolizes his artistic potential, and the older version represents his reckless lifestyle, drinking and all that this includes. There are bottles and vessels of wine in the room, and glasses on the ground. He has a sword in one hand and a paintbrush in the other. But as you can see, he has turned to the sword, turned his back on the paintbrush and the easel behind him, which is covered with a cloth. I think there is something to the idea that he chose the dark life and died while still having a death warrant on him. The style of the image, the lighting and the composition was also my attempt to follow in Caravaggio's style of chiaroscuro, with high contrast and light guiding the image. I also tried to follow his style of dramatic facial expressions and very few objects in the scene. What do you think? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something or at least felt entertained for a while. See you in the next one.